Hello everyone, I'm the Logical Cinéphile, and I'm starting this channel as a way to, I guess, view movies, postulate theories, um, add ratings, and possibly see new films that I haven't seen before by your recommendations. So the way this works is I'll review the movie first by kind of giving you a rundown on it. Um, Letting you know what I thought was either wrong with it or what I thought was right with it. And hopefully kind of picks up traction and I actually start getting new viewers. So if you are new to the channel, which everyone will be, please subscribe because I would actually kind of like to make this content. So the first film that we're going to dissect today will be one of my favorite films of all time. I'm just gonna go ahead and give you the star rating on this, and it'll be a 1 to 5 star rating. 1 being absolute worst, 5 being absolute best. And yeah, we'll go from there. A film that I've actually given 4 stars to. Um, it not meeting the full 5 star rating because very seldom will you find that I have those on this list, but I would like to kind of get more into doing more horror films, psychological thrillers, things like that. um, However, this film I gave a 4 star rating because the acting in it was kind of shoddy. I mean, there was some of it that was, kind of realistic. You could believe some of it. But that's the Blair Witch Project. And I know this one gets a lot of hate because, it was the first of its kind, the whole found footage thing. A lot of people see it as corny or cheesy or whatever, but after subsequent viewings, I have I've realized that this film has way more layers, and I'll go through some of the theories that I've seen online. But first, let's break down I guess, the history of it. So, back in like the 16 or 1700s, there's this woman that was accused of witchcraft named Ellie Kedward, which is obviously, the reverse of Kelly Edward. um, and this is back whenever the town of Burkittsville was formerly Blair. And she vowed essentially to, whilst burning at the stake, vowed essentially to, um, come back and stalk the town, everything like that. Um, there was an incident with a girl named Robin Weaver who kind of, she follows this woman into the woods. And then, she's gone for 3 days. Everybody's, looking for her. They're freaking out. And then all of a sudden, 3 days later, she's back at her grandmother's doorstep. And she has a story about this woman whose feet never touch the floor. um, in the 1940s, a kind of hermit who lived up in the woods area of Blair. A guy by the name of Rustin Parr wound up killing a certain amount of children. He would take them up by threes or whatever, or take them into the basement by twos. he'd make one face the corner, and then he'd kill the other, and goes into town and says that he's almost finished and everything like that, supposedly being possessed or haunted by the ghost of this Ellie Kedward. Move on to 1999, which is when the film takes place, where we meet, Josh, Mike, and Heather. Heather basically spearheading this project known as the titular Blair Witch Project, where they're going to, I guess, interview the townsfolk and go into the woods and film the things there, and hopefully win some student film competition or something, most likely. So, of course, the opening of the film shows Heather Donahue. She's getting ready to go out. She shows that she has her outdoor survival guide, and all these books on the subject of witchcraft, and this book that has a story about this incident at Coffin Rock, where these guys are basically, they go out looking for these children or whatever, and then they get killed, and they're laid out and their bodies are splayed out in these horrifying manners, whatever. And then she's, Josh shows up. He's late. He slept in late, whatever. He's the one who's running the, film. And then, of course, they go and pick up their, sound guy, which is Mike. And off to Burkittsville they go. Soon after getting there, they start, interviewing the townsfolk. And, getting more, backstory. One of I think the general store owner, he winds up telling them about the tale of Rustin Parr. These two fishermen guys, they tell the story of Robin Weaver, and one of the guys says that he sees this mist come up out of the water and just disappear into the woods or whatever. And the one fisherman, the younger one, not by much, he claims that it's all BS. And there's a woman that says she won't go up into the woods, and her daughter's trying to, cover her mouth, everything like that. And, it's basically said that this is kind of a back and forth thing. So they go up and they meet with this Mary Brown, who is this religious extremist or zealot or whatever. Crazy old lady, lives in a, trailer park. And she tells them of her own run-in with the Blair Witch, which is basically her father and her used to go fishing or whatever, go hunting or whatever it was. And she sees this old woman, and she's kind of hairy, and she opens up her shawl to reveal hair, and she's got hooves, and she's floating and all this, and nothing much is said. I mean, after that, you see them basically making fun of Mary Brown, and then they go and they pick up their supplies, and they go to the hotel that they stay in overnight before subsequently heading out the next morning to go and, view this Blair Witch, whatever. So they finally get out to the woods. They leave their car on the side of the road, and they make their way into the woods. They go and they see Coffin Rock. They go and see these this little cemetery or whatever. And after they see the cemetery, they spend the night that's basically, uneventful. The next morning, they make the trek out or they make the trek out to go see the cemetery. And on their way there, they see basically what looks like human figures that are carved out of, like, made out of sticks and, some sort of twine, hanging from the trees in the forest, which is, freaky enough as is. Um, Heather winds up taking, Heather winds up taking the, like, one of the rocks or one of the trinkets or whatever. And then the first night, Josh says that he heard, like a cackling and, breaking of twigs, which becomes a motif later on in the film. But like I said, the first night's really uneventful. The next night, they still haven't made their way out of the woods, and panic's kind of starting to set in. They're starting to become delirious because they haven't really packed for that much, and tensions start rising. I believe it's after this. The second day they hear, the branches snapping off in the woods. The third day they start hearing giggling of children around the tent. Branches snapping, everything like that. And then they hear this, I don't know, it's like the grunting of like an animal or a person, and that the tent starts shaking and they, haul ass off into the woods. Now, the first of our characters to go comes after a kind of, heated discussion or a heated, argument wherein you find out that Mike has kicked the map into the, the river. And they have nothing but the compass, and they can't find their way out, and they're following, the river or whatever, and they still haven't made their way out, etc., etc. They wake up the next morning, and Josh isn't there. And before all this, there's a, they come back, and Josh's stuff is strewn all over the place, and has this like jelly, weird stuff. Well, after Josh's disappearance, there's a little bit of a bundle left outside of the tent. When they unravel it, they find teeth and blood. That night, they hear the screams of Josh far off into the distance. When they run up, to where they hear the sound of Josh screaming, they find the old, farmhouse or the old, forest house that Rustin Parr lived in, and where he committed all the murders and everything like that. And this leads to this kind of, frantic scene of where they're running upstairs and they hear Josh downstairs and they're running downstairs and everything like that. And you see Mike go downstairs into the cellar. He gets knocked over. And you hear, Heather off in the distance kind of, essentially screaming out for Mike. And then, she goes downstairs, she sees Mike standing in the corner, and then she gets knocked down, and it just films the, her scream stop, the film stops, and it starts showing the credits. So that's basically the general rundown of the film. Spoiler alert to anyone. I know I was supposed to put that beforehand. But this is a movie that came out in 1999. This is over 20 years old now. So if you haven't seen it by now, I'm sorry. Where it gets a lot of the hate is some of the, the shaky, the shaky content, the kind of cheese factor to it. Um, but it had one of the most brilliant setups ever, because I remember when I was a kid seeing on the news that there was this, they had found footage of these kids that had, disappeared a year prior or whatever. I remember it being set up to be like, oh, this is actual legitimate found footage, which is where the name of the genre came from, or the category or whatever. Um, there are some parts that kind of bother me about it. Yeah, like I said, some of the acting is a little cheesy. There's a part where they're running through the woods before Josh, kind of says that he heard the sound of a baby, and they said there's no baby out there and everything like that. Where you hear Heather basically exclaiming, what is that? One of the most made fun of portions is where Heather is, apologizing to her family and Mike's family and Josh's family. And, she has the snot dribbling out. And there's no actual scene of a witch or anything like that. But, I think the overall atmosphere and the unknown is what I kind of like about it. And what has kind of, to this day, led me to be not necessarily scared of the film, like, but it does elicit a response. But we'll get into some of the theories that have been had. One of the most famous theories is that is that Mike and Josh led her up there to, be slaughtered or whatever. Which, okay, that's kind of a sound theory, and it kind of runs into my theory. But we'll get to another one of the theories, and one of the theories is that they're basically stuck in this like dimensional vortex type of deal, where it's, basically on a time loop, so that's why they can't find their way out of the forest. And I mean, that's a good theory too, but, I feel that this is supposed to be more realistic. And so we'll get into my theory now. My theory is that Josh's mom's maiden name was Parr. And that because Rustin Parr wasn't necessarily able to complete what he was supposed to do, the spirit of the Blair Witch or whatever kind of moved on to his next of kin, which would have been, his daughter or, whatever, which would be Mike's or Josh's grandmother. And excuse me. And that the sounds that they heard of the, the laughing and the children and everything like that were a part of Josh's family, because he was the first to go, but he was also the first to hear the cackling. Somehow he got out of the tent without them ever knowing, without Heather and them waking up. I mean, they woke up because of broken twigs. That was kind of an inconsistency in it. So Mike somehow just Josh somehow disappears and leaves Mike and Heather to their own devices. But, Heather already said she sleeps like a rock, but, Mike and, I find it odd that Josh remained mostly composed. Him and Heather used to date. is a part of the story. So a part of the actual known um, a part of the known thing is that, like the actual uh, I don't know, the lore of it would be that Heather and Josh once used to be an item. They broke up for whatever reason, um, and I believe it would be somehow due to Heather having broken his heart, but they somehow remain friends, which is a thing. Um, so this is why I believe that Mike I mean, not Mike, sorry. I keep, confusing the two. This is why Josh kind of hatches this plan along with his family so that they can, kill the other two that were left that Rustin Parr didn't get to kill. Um, and we're not even going to bring Blair Witch or Book of Shadows into this because those two films are just absolutely atrocious. But I do like the lore and a bit of the history surrounding it, the story surrounding it, because it is so immersive. I mean, they had the kind of ARG game and everything. I mean, this kind of reeked of ARG stats to me. But I believe that Josh is basically a part of this cult that kind of runs within his family. That's the part that I do kind of agree with. I don't think that Mike and Heather were actually in on it. um, but the fact that they kept hearing Josh's voice, and you can hear it on the camera stuff. He's dead, what's that? The fear in Mike's voice is absolutely abundant. So that's why I don't think he's that good of an actor. Most college kids aren't. So I don't believe that he was a part of it. I do believe it was Josh. Josh and his family. Possibly the father being dead. And they kind of, that kind of drives the mom mad. It kind of drives Josh mad and everything like that, as well as kind of losing, Heather during that death, whatever it may be. Because, I mean, she apologizes to their moms and they never mention anything about the dads. I'm not sure if Josh's girlfriend was in on it or whatever, but somehow the footage was found. And the cops and the people who went up into there, they didn't enter the vortex themselves, so that's where that kind of throws that theory off for me. But like I said, I give this film a solid 4 stars. It'd be 4.5, but there are some inconsistencies in it, and I just can't overlook it. And I know I did the review kind of out of the breakdown of it kind of out of whack because I'm trying to get this all in. I am shooting this on a phone. And so there's a limited amount of time, so I'm trying to, kind of rush through this. But I think that Josh and his family are the ones responsible for it. I love that the directors and the 2 directors who kind of ran this idea by Haxon Films and, Artisan and everything like that, they were allowed to do this, and it was on a shoestring budget, and it had a basic rundown of the script. Okay, this is what you're going to do. This is whatever. The only people who actually had dialogue was the townsfolk. Um, I like the fact that, I mean, I've heard that they were kind of treated poorly and they were left to, conditions like, basically they left them out in the woods, and, they actually did kind of get lost. So there is some believable acting in there. Some of the, the stuff that you see on the camera is 100% positively, can't even say it, positively factual. Um, but I am of the mind that it made for a great film. That's what made it such a powerful piece of cinema to me, was that it was shot on 16 millimeter. It was shot with basically, a Sony, Handycam, and you know, I mean, it was brilliantly shot. There was no extra lighting. It was a dark film. It was grainy, but I think that along with the promotional materials surrounding it, it made it one of the best and most ingenious found footage films of all time. On top of being the first, it was the grandfather of all these, found footage films. Um, and did it in the most ingenious way. I mean, you couldn't get away with that now. I mean, everything's on like Twitter and, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. So I don't think you could get away with it now, but I do think that this is a genius film. I see why people don't like it, but I personally do like it. It's not up to me to tell you what you can and cannot dislike. Um, but yeah, that was it's my first video. We're at the end, obviously. So again, leave a like, um, hit that subscribe button, please, please, please hit that subscribe button, because I do rather enjoy, like I said, postulating theories and reviewing films. There's a reason that the channel is called The Logical Cinéphile, or just Logical Cinéphile. Eventually, I would like to get to where I can either interview the directors of films, or, producers of the films, or anybody involved with these films, so that I can kind of add more to the substance of the channel. There's a lot that I think that I could do with it, and with your backing, I think that we could go the extra mile. So if you want to become a part of the Cinéphile fam, please hit subscribe, please hit the like button, and until next time, kids, Logical Cinéphile, over and out.